go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
This is a low-budget film, like, you know, that's sort of repetitive with tonight's, the title of the show, Creature Features. But this was a low-budget film, I'm sure a first effort, and it has a lot of Texas written all over it, shot down the border there. And what I want you to do tonight is sort of stick with this film like it was yours. It was your first effort, okay? And you can tune it off, tune out of it, whenever you think that you could have done a better job. All right? But please wait till the opening credits, all right?
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your Mission Commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen.
And on this episode of Planet 8, we're getting ready for the Thanksgiving holiday. We're going to be talking about turkeys, not the kind that you eat, but cinematic turkeys. You may like them, you may not. We're going to discuss some of them today. Take it away. We're going to send it up to the satellite. Walker.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Yes, of course, it's getting close to Thanksgiving here in the States, and that brings about fond memories of turkey.
Oh, yeah.
But for us, for those of us who love watching films, and especially genre films, there are many films that people consider to be turkeys. You know, that term coming about, I think, in the mid-'70s. Of course, the Medved brothers had their Golden Turkey Awards and so forth. And, you know, there's a lot of genre films that got lambasted and, oh, they're so bad, you know, or they're so bad they're good, because you can sit there and make fun of them. I mean, MST3K, of course, made a whole show out of it. But I think for a lot of us, a lot of these films, yeah, maybe we know that they're not the greatest films, but we still enjoy them, you know. Maybe we enjoy them on different levels, or maybe we think, you know what? They just missed the boat. They didn't understand the movie. They didn't get it. So there's certainly a lot of films out there that we like, or we like for a certain reason, that are turkeys. And I think, we've kind of in the background talked about some of them that we wanted to discuss today. But, some of the more famous ones, I suppose, would be things like, Plan 9 from Outer Space. And a lot of the things that are now cult classics, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody knows about those.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Hey, brother.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Hey! You know, one man's turkey is another man's treasure. So there you go. But, I guess I'm curious to see what you guys came up with. I know I have a few on my list, but let's get this party started.
Yeah, Chief, why don't you give us a start here? What do you got there?
Well, I mean, being the horror sci-fi monster genre that we usually focus on, I'm thinking, that genre may have more turkeys than most.
Oh, yeah.
Because you did have all kind of the cheap throwaway and the independent and the B movies and all that. But, you can make a cheap B movie of people talking. Mm-hmm. But when you have to suddenly come up with special effects and a monster, and, how good is that rubber suit you're parading around, then, I think this genre has probably more turkeys than most. But, I enjoy them all. I love them all. But, people who've listened to the podcast, people who know me, know that, I love Japanese monster movies and all that. So, Toho, Daiei, Godzilla, Gamera, whatever. And, to me, there's not a turkey in the bunch, but to a lot of people out there, there probably is. In fact, I had an online battle with the quote Japanese or quote Asian film expert Rick Myers at one point, where he was like claiming that a bunch of Godzilla movies have little kids who ride bikes around and get into military operations and, help figure out how to destroy the monster and all that. And I told him none of the Godzilla movies have that. Gamera, Borderline, there may be a couple, but none in Godzilla. There's been a few with little kids, but they weren't like in with the military or in with the scientists and telling them what to do. But no, he wouldn't believe me. So, there's a lot of perceptions out there on a lot of these films. But, rather than defend the entire genre as a whole, I thought I'd focus in on, now you mentioned Medved's Golden Turkey Awards.
Right.
And one of the Japanese films that he had on the top of a couple lists was Attack of the Mushroom People, also known in Japan as Matango. And this was released in 1963, and it really is, in my opinion anyway, a good film. If you sit there and watch it, the problem with bringing Japanese films over to the States is at the time they had to dub everything. And so people are more focused on, hey, their lips aren't syncing up with the dialogue. And depending on how good the dubbers are, it's like, boy, these actors suck. Well,
yeah,
it's not the actor that sucks. It's the guy who's providing his voice that sucks. So I definitely would recommend going back, watching it with subtitles in the original Japanese, because it has an all-star Toho cast with Hiroshi Koizumi and Akira Kubo and Kenji Sahara, Kumi Mizuno. These are like top-line Toho actors, many of which also acted in a lot of Akira Kurosawa's films. So they weren't like B-movie actors. They're actually good actors. And the movie is basically based on A Voice in the Night, which was a short story by William Hodgson. And not a lot of similarities, but that was the inspiration for it anyway. And it's kind of a 1963 psychedelic drug type film, because it's basically these castaways are on an island, and we'll get to that later, but these castaways are on an island, and they're running out of food, and the only thing they're left to eat are mushrooms. And when you eat these mushrooms, you become a mushroom yourself. And so there's the whole thing like, don't eat the mushrooms. I have to eat the mushroom. The whole back and forth. And, of course, the personalities of the different characters. Some are, clashing in that. Some are hoarding food and hoarding, the mushrooms. Some are just going right out and eating them up, and off they go. And, mushroom people they are. But it's a very good movie, psychological, and a lot of drug allegories. And I mentioned, castaways on an island. If you look at these characters, there's a captain, there's a first mate, there's a celebrity actress, there's a very shy kind of farm girl, and there's a rich guy. So basically, you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
I think it was very much. This was 1963. I think it was very much somewhere back in the consciousness of the people who created Gilligan's Island. But so, if nothing else, you could watch it just to see that and to figure out if there's really a connection or not.
What would have happened to the castaways if they
swapped
had eaten psychedelic mushrooms?
Well, they did. Didn't they have that episode where that crate of vegetables that were radiated or something, they wound up on shore?
Oh, God.
And like Marianne ate the carrots so she could see far away. And,
yeah.
Mrs. Howell ate beets. And so she was running all over really fast because she had all this energy and all that. So, yeah, I mean, basically. And there was also an episode of Gilligan's Island with poison mushrooms where I think Marianne ate the poison mushrooms, and they called it like lumus seclumus was the like disease or whatever, the poison that she had. But, there's a lot of crossovers. So, go check it out. It's not a bad movie. It's a very good movie if you're not watching the edited, dubbed Attack of the Mushroom People, which I grew up loving anyway. But, if you want to see how good this movie actually is, you need to search it out in the actual Japanese language with subtitles.
There's a fun story for those of you that love creature features. With Bob Wilkins not showing. Eventually, he showed the movie, but didn't he preview the movie, Bob? And he watched it backwards. Something the reels were out of.
Well, when Bob would get the movies for the show, he had a 16 millimeter projector in his garage, and he would go and watch the movies before he'd show them. And he was kind of thinking, well, God, he watched obviously the English dubbed Attack of the Mushroom People, and he thought, this is so bad. What am I going to do? And that's kind of where he started, where he'd come on the air and he'd host the movie and he'd say, this movie's so bad, you should switch the channel. And then he'd get out TV Guide and start reading what's on the other channels and all that. And that kind of became his shtick. But, it was Attack of the Mushroom People. And he did a Return to Creature Features special where he showed Attack of the Mushroom People. But it was, I can't remember what the method he showed it in was, but basically what would happen is you'd be watching this movie and all of a sudden it would get to a certain point and it would start like fast forwarding, like fast scanning to the next scene, like, all right, slow scene on to the next one. And I think he showed the whole thing with commercials and his interjections in like an hour.
Wow.
So, but no, Attack of the Mushroom People, Matongo, check it out.
Cool. Well, let's kick it back to the satellite. Karen, what do you got for us?
Well, I thought about this, and I have to represent for the Star Trek contingent. Now, there are a number of Star Trek films that I think are actually so bad that I don't want to watch them, and that would be in the Next Generation portion of the films. Insurrection, it's so boring and so terrible. I just have no interest. And then of course Nemesis. Well, we've talked about Nemesis a little bit, and it's just dreadful. I think when the actors start getting more and more control over the scripts, things really start to go down the toilet. But
like Moon Knight.
Well, yeah, who knows? But there is one original series film that is much maligned that I understand why people think it's bad, because it's not a great film. But there are moments in it that I think that kind of exemplify the best of Star Trek, and that is Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. So it came out in 1989, famously directed by the man himself, William Shatner. What can you say about this film? Well, probably has the worst effects of any of the Star Trek movies. They skimped on the effects, and the budget was cut back quite a bit.
Was it still ILM that did the effects?
No, they went with somebody else. And you know what? I don't recall at the moment, but the magical world of Wikipedia would probably tell us.
There was some kind of a strike going on, too, at the time. And it kind of screwed up the production. Or maybe it was the writing. Maybe the writing.
Yeah, they had some different issues with effects and with the production overall. Let's see. So ILM had done the previous effects for the previous films.
Up to Star Trek 4. with the whales, right?
But they were all busy working on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and Ghostbusters 2. They also wanted to save money. And apparently they went to Associates and Farron, who doesn't sound like they did a great job with it. But anyway, in any case, one of the other big things with this film, of course, is the introduction of Sybok, who was the then unknown half-brother of Spock. Was I still think was a horrendous idea and probably led to us getting, later undiscovered siblings. There's a lot of poor ideas, and the tone overall is incredibly uneven in the film because they wanted to continue some of the humor from The Voyage Home because that had been so popular. So they have the characters doing, ridiculous things like walking into bulkheads and stuff. It's just really, really uneven and sloppy and stuff. But there are still moments in this that are just really great Star Trek moments. There's the moment when, Sybok is trying to convince Kirk and Spock and McCoy to join his cause. And he's showing them, these pivotal moments in their past and trying to release your pain. And, Kirk is like, my pain is what makes me me, I need my pain. And it's just such a classic Kirk moment, and then the moments with the big three camping together and talking about their lives together and so forth. And DeForest Kelley does a great job in this film. He's like the anchor of the cast, I think, keeping everything going. And
well, he has that whole scene where they're looking at his past.
Right. It's
also
moving.
They're addressing his age, and he's shaking when he's trying to, But yeah, it was, I think he took it more seriously than the others as far as, what they were pointing out about him.
Well, he had that whole scene about his father was critically ill, and he decided to, let him go, let him die. And then, of course, they found a cure to whatever his father's illness was, shortly after. So he harbors this guilt, which we never knew. We never knew about him. So, there's these great, significant character moments in this otherwise, kind of turkey of a movie. There's these great moments for these Star Trek characters that we've, followed for all these years.
Well, let's not forget, we found out the past of Bones with his father, but we found out Uhura owned boas and feather fans and could dance. Was that the merengue? Or that was just stunning. Her captivating the audience on Nimbus 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there you go. Again, one man's turkey is another man's treasure.
We saw the first toilet in a Star Trek movie. With
yes.
three of them in the brig.
I'm sure that was a highlight for many.
I remember watching this movie in Berkeley with Walker, and of all the critiques you could make on the film, the thing that really pissed her off, didn't just bug her, pissed her off, was them having Scotty walk into a bulkhead. The chief engineer of the Enterprise that knows this ship like the back of what? Give me a break. Oh my God. And 30 years later, or however many years, it's still a sore spot.
It sticks out. It does. It does. It is just a cheap joke at his expense. But the thing is, I will still watch this movie. It's not my first choice of a Star Trek movie to sit down and watch, but I'll pull it out and watch it occasionally because it does have its high points, It's like, and I kind of feel like almost any Star Trek, classic Trek, even the worst episodes will have its high points. So, is it a turkey? Yeah, it's a turkey, but it has, there's a little bit of great flavor here and there in it.
It's
so
well basted.
Yeah, every once in a while.
You kind of get an inkling that Scotty and Uhura maybe sorta. Could have been a couple.
Yeah, that was weird.
Or
it was weird.
Might have been cool, but could have been. And then we got to meet God, or an alien who thought they were God.
Well, and that was another good line. What does God need with a starship?
Yeah, at first they're ready to get on their knees and start praying, and then Kirk's like, well, wait a minute. What does God need with a starship?
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, excuse me. And there's Bones. You don't want to piss off the Almighty, Jim.
I thought it was funny that back in the DVD days, they were releasing like double DVD sets of each of the movies, and the second one would have the director's cut, and they'd bring the directors back to like re-edit and do what they want to do with the film, and then they got to Star Trek V, and Shatner's all ready to do his, and they're like, no, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting how they've redone a number of the films, and they keep doing special versions and all this other stuff, but Star Trek V gets no love. And I know Shatner has spoken at many events about how he would love to get, a new version where he could get new special effects and do, because there's famously the whole scene on that planet with God or whatever. He wanted to have these big rock monsters that were supposed to be chasing Kirk, and all this stuff was supposed to be happening, and they just didn't have the budget for it. I don't know that it would have been a great story. I still think the story was not a very good story, but sure, maybe if he'd had more budget and they could have done some stuff with the effects, maybe it would have at least looked a little snazzier. But yeah, it doesn't seem like anybody's chomping at the bit to like give Shatner another shot at it.
I will say if they would have gave me more of them camping, I would have been okay with another half hour or so.
Sitting around the campfire singing.
And then there was the commander with the big heart and, the crocodile tears. At the end of the film where, Kirk says, I thought I was going to die, and Spock says, you're never alone. And he's going to hug Spock, and he's like, Captain, not in front of the Klingons. That is just great. I mean,
there's some good bits, that's the thing. There's some good bits. It's not entirely devoid, but it's definitely it's a lower rung entry, but not completely worth. I'll watch that before I would ever watch Insurrection or Nemesis. So there you go.
Oh yeah, don't get me started with those Next Generation films, especially the latter.
What about you, Commander?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious that I was going to pick Batman versus Superman. Joked about it. I talked about it. I just love that movie. And in preparing for this, I was reading some of the criticism that other folks, and let me state too for the record, I don't know if I've put this out there before, whether it's food or movies or music, I can't stand critics. And no offense, but in my opinion, if you don't have the talent to create your own food recipe or your own music album or your own movie, what gives you the cojones to tell someone whether their food, movie, or music is crap or not? Let alone trying to influence me, because I may love Peach Cobbler, and you as a critic don't. I may love Ben Affleck, and you as a critic don't. So, I'm always very cautious with what other people try and influence or tell me to like or not like. That being said, I couldn't stand Aquaman, but and coincidentally, Jasmine loves Aquaman, and that's fine.
I'm sure I know why.
Yeah, well, one big reason. But to me, Bob had started out talking about all the things we talk about: comic books, horror movies. I never equated fandom with like sports. Screw the 49ers. Screw the, Patriots. And there's this huge competitive, like, evil means in sports that I never thought that there was a place in, what's faster, the Enterprise or the Millennium Falcon? Well, it's a nice debate to have. And, which captain would you like to serve under, Kirk or Picard, and why? Things like that. It was never like, well, screw, Anyway, that being said, so Batman versus Superman. In reading some of the background on this, people thought one of the criticisms was that they put too much in this movie, introducing the new Lex Luthor, introducing a new version of Batman. I thought, a lot of fun is made over her Martha Wayne. Why'd you say that name? I was, into it. And the funny thing is, just like the end of Avengers Endgame, I told this story before, I'm on an airplane, we're going to Greece, and I don't even hear what's going on, but I see Cap tightening the shield and the horde of, minions coming towards him from Thanos. And I tear up because it's like this moment where Sam says, "On your left, Cap." In the dawn of the daylight and the sun. And that, the end of, spoiler alert, Batman versus Superman, or, Superman's in the casket, but the rocks kind of rise, teary-eyed. I'm so invested in this character. And look, who's going to be able to replace Christopher Reeve and the version of Superman? My dying day, that is going to be my cinematic Superman. But Henry Cavill came along. He gave a good, try. He did okay. Ben Affleck as Batman. Batfleck for Batman. Not exactly what was in the graphic novel, but the dialogue worked for me. Jeremy Irons as Alfred. And then Gal Gadot shows up and, Wonder Woman helps fight at the end of the film. What's not to like? So, for my money, call it a turkey. I don't necessarily agree with them. I do not. Batman versus Superman is my misunderstood film that is near and dear to my.
Well said.
Thank you.
And we remained quiet during the whole thing.
And I thank both of you very, very much for that, because I tell you, over the years. Who's up next? Is it Bob?
Yeah, it would be me.
Take it away, sir.
All right. Speaking of Batman, I thought, what movies really gets panned all the time, and it was Batman and Robin, right? With Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze and Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, and I'm like, that's a pretty good cast. And they introduced Batgirl. I'll give it a watch. So I watched it last night, and I'm scratching it off my list because I really cannot defend that movie. So, moving on.
Valiant effort.
Yeah, I watched it. I gave it a chance. I was going to, be the staunch defender of Batman and Robin, but yeah, no, I couldn't do it. So,
nice try.
The next one on my list was going to be Speed Racer, and I thought, well, I really kind of covered all that in our Hidden Gems episode. Mm-hmm. Suffice to say that it was panned, but I still think it's a very entertaining movie. So instead, last night, I watched Pacific Rim Uprising, which was a sequel to Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim. Now, if you sit there and compare the two, I mean, you got a director like Del Toro. I mean, I still think Pacific Rim is a great movie. And so what had happened was it did okay here, but it did gangbusters over in China. And it made big bucks over there. So when Pacific Rim Uprising came along, it was basically put out with more of the Chinese market in mind than the American market. And I think a lot of people just didn't get parts of it. And I kind of equate the two. The original Pacific Rim is sort of like Gundam, where you got these big tanks and they're shaped like robots, and Pacific Rim Uprising is more of a throwback, I think, to the days of like Mazinger Z and Combattler V and Raideen and all the 70s super robots, which I love, unabashedly love. So I do enjoy Pacific Rim Uprising for that reason. And then you also have a couple twists and turns with some of the characters that return from the second film. And it keeps it interesting, so they're not just doing a retread. And of course, the final battle is like 4 Jaegers against one giant kaiju at the base, right outside of Mount Fuji. So it happens right there in Japan. And very exciting battle, trying to keep this giant creature from getting to Mount Fuji. And again, I think your cup of tea, not your cup of tea. It is an enjoyable film, and I think it can be enjoyed that way if you're not comparing it to the artistry of Pacific Rim. I mean, Del Toro has some amazing shots in that movie. In fact, if you get the chance to watch the 3D version of it, it wasn't really shot in 3D, but they had the 3D conversion for the 3D Blu-ray. Looks amazing. Looks like, that must have been shot in 3D. And the depth, there's a lot of the color palette matches characters and things. So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of thought, I think, that Del Toro put in to Pacific Rim. That Pacific Rim Uprising just being sent out there as an action film, a lot of the artistry was lost. And, John Boyega is a star, so, if you like him in Star Wars, then you probably like him in Pacific Rim. But, he basically plays the son of Pentecost, who was Idris Elba's character in Pacific Rim. And so, of course, Mako, his daughter, is his sister or half-sister or whatever. And he's basically a scrapper. He goes out and he finds parts of Jaegers and resells them, because this is like, years after the original Pacific Rim, and everybody's sort of at peace. And so, you've got these black market Jaegers and things that he's like stealing parts for. But he, of course, gets recruited back as a pilot when a rogue company basically comes out with their own Jaegers and starts attacking things with the Jaegers. And he's got to help defend the world. But, yeah, I mean, overall, I think, give it a chance. I think it's pretty good. Just don't expect great art. Just expect a good action movie.
Well said. Recently I had the good fortune of going to a movie theater and watching the 3D conversion of Dawn of the Dead, the original George Romero, and they color corrected the blood and the zombies, and I love the movie as it was, but a great addition to the kind of plus that, so I can appreciate a 3D conversion.
Well, I mean, I think the most amazing 3D conversion I've seen is actually the original Jurassic Park, which obviously was not shot in 3D, but the 3D in the Blu-ray, amazing. From what people tell me, the 3D conversion of The Wizard of Oz is amazing. And I haven't had a chance to watch that. My 3D plasma that I had is now a gaming monitor back in Michael's room, so I can't watch my 3D movies anymore. But I would, if I ever got a chance to watch Wizard of Oz in 3D, I would probably do it.
Wow.
Good. Aki, what do you got for us?
Well, I have a little film from 1978 called Laser Blast.
Laser Blast.
So Laser Blast is one of those things that, people like to joke about and make fun of. and it's, again, admittedly not a very good movie, but it's not a horrible movie. I mean, it was just one of these films that was made pretty much on the fly to capitalize off of Star Wars. And actually, in the film, there's a point where for some inexplicable reason, there is a billboard on the side of the road. It doesn't say like, go see Star Wars, or it doesn't have like a picture of the Star Wars poster or something. It just says Star Wars. And the lead character blows it up with the laser gun. So, they're very like conscious of Star Wars in this film. And the guy who made it wanted, like, I want this to be the next Star Wars. Dude, this is not the next Star Wars. But it's an entertaining film. And I think because there may be some elements of like wish fulfillment in that the main character is this teenager and he finds a ray gun, a laser gun, and is able to go around like blowing shit up, basically. And so, who hasn't wanted to do that, right? So it's kind of exciting. Unfortunately, in order to use the ray gun, he has to wear this pendant, and the pendant starts, it attaches itself to his chest, and then he starts mutating into this like green fanged thing the more he uses the gun. Probably the best part of Laser Blast is these stop motion aliens. Mm-hmm. So the gun was left behind. These aliens at the beginning of the movie, you see this alien that looks like what the kid starts turning into, this green skinned guy, and he's running around with a laser gun. And then the spaceship shows up, and these stop motion aliens that look kind of like turtles without the shell come out, and they're like going, and they're looking around, and then they see the dude with the laser gun, and they blast him. But then inexplicably, instead of going and grabbing the laser gun, they see an airplane flying overhead, and they go, and they go back in the ship and take off. So they leave the laser gun, and Billy the kid finds the laser gun and starts playing with it. Well, yeah, okay, Billy the kid. And it's later on in the movie, we flash back to the aliens on board their ship, and they're like pressing buttons and doing stuff. And then the video screen on the ship comes on, and it's clearly like their boss, ruler, whatever. He has like a little symbol on his chest, and he comes on the screen and he like flashes a hand symbol, and he's like, Meh. And they're like, Meh. And then he's like, Meh, and he like shows them a video of the kid getting the gun and blowing stuff up, and then they're all like, and they fly back to the plane. Like, why didn't you take the gun? And they're like, well, plane flew overhead. And they're like, well, go get the gun. So then they have to go back to Earth, and they have to like make up for their mistakes. And meanwhile, Billy is like freaking out and turning into this like green dude and shooting and blowing up things, blowing up cars. These bullies who messed with him, he blows them up. And it's just like, it's totally ridiculous. And the strange thing is, like, there's actually a couple of well-known actors in it. Roddy McDowall is in it, and Keenan Wynn. I don't know. They needed some money or something. Who knows? But it's just funny and goofy, and you've got stop-motion aliens and laser guns. So, I don't know why it gets so much crap. Yes, there's bad acting, and it's cheap, but, I think it's a fun little movie.
I love Laser Blast. They'll have the VHS tape. I have the Blu-ray, and that was the best, 5-minute version of the film I've heard in my life. That was just fantastic.
Well, I didn't see it in the theater when it came out, but I think it was on TV really quickly, because I know I saw it on, I think it was probably like KTLA. They showed all the sci-fi and monster movies pre my driving years. So it had to be like 79 or something.
I didn't see it at the movies either, but I think I know someone who did.
I bet we do.
Yes, I did see it. In fact, that's probably the last time I saw it was in the movie theater. I think I saw it in the drive-in back when it came out. And no, I know, like Butch Portillo, who was on our Ray Harryhausen episode, That's like one of his favorite movies. And I think Dave Allen did the special effects on it.
Yeah, he did.
And he also did a really cool King Kong Volkswagen commercial.
Oh, I remember that.
Which, it was basically a takeoff on King Kong, but when he comes off the Empire State Building, he's got one of the biplanes under his arm, and he throws it in the trunk of the VW and gets in and drives off. But I think Dave Allen was the one who did all the stop motion effects in that.
Yeah, he did. And I think it was Greg Jane made the spaceship that he animated.
Nice. I was going to say Butch has a lot of production material and like photographs and stuff he was shooting. So yeah, it was a good time. Good movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go revisit it again. 50 years later almost.
Wow. You'll have fun.
It's true, 78, 88, 98, 2008. Oh, wow.
44, 45 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Well, kids, as we continue with our golden turkeys, I'm going back to the world of superheroes, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about Superman 3. Star Christopher Reeve, also Richard Pryor, and the film unfortunately did not know what it wanted to be. Did it want to be a comedy? Did it want to be a Superman movie? Did it want to be the introduction of a new villain? It's supposed to be Brainiac, and instead it gets kind of like dumbed down. Was it? Who was Vought? Can't think of his name. He was the man from Uncle.
Richard Vaughn? Robert Vaughn. Robert Vaughn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that movie was a hot mess, but Richard Pryor did his best. There was a video game component of it. And the thing that I like is Superman facing his dark side. And it's kind of funny to me now, but, the dark version of Superman is dressed in a Superman costume, and he's just, has a scowl on his face. And the good version of Superman is dressed as Clark Kent. So he goes in to confront him, and he's at the bar, and he's taking shots, at the bar, and it's like, that's not evil Superman, that's my Uncle Gary. But anyway, They have this battle in a junkyard and, kind of talk it out. And, Superman ultimately wins and, they merge together. It kind of reminded me of that episode, Star Trek, where Kirk gets split.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, yeah.
The dark side and then
the enemy within.
Yes. Great episode, too, folks. If you haven't seen that episode of Star Trek, it's some good acting by Mr. Shatner, the man. But even with all the hokey effects and, I'm not sure where they were going to go with Richard Pryor, but he was very popular at the time. So, they brought him in, and then that kind of killed the Superman franchise for a number of years till Superman 4.
Oh.
And then that really killed the franchise after that. But I digress. Pass the turkey off to our next presenter.
Well, that was also around the time they did Supergirl, right, with Helen Slater?
Yes.
So,
yeah,
that was another movie, Superman 3, which I saw in the theater and haven't seen since. But, I mean, I remember the scenes as you're talking about them, and it's like, okay, yeah. I think I was just disappointed with the comedy element in it, but...
Yeah, it was almost like two different movies, and then ultimately, Richard Pryor saves Superman because he's a scientist or a computer engineer or whoever. Anyway, it was a hard watch, but it was a fun watch as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
fun as Laser Blast.
Maybe I'll stick. I've got like all these movies listed down, but I'll probably stick with the superhero genre then, and I'll stick with my my Japanese slant on this stuff, and I'm going to talk about Starman. Now, we're talking Ken Utsui. We're not talking Jeff Bridges. And that John Carpenter ripoff of Starman. But, Starman started in Japan as a TV series called Supergiant. And then it was brought over here by Walter Manley Enterprises and dubbed and released as 4 different movies starring Starman, who came down from the Emerald Planet with the globe meter, which gave him all these powers. And he fought everything from salamander men to Nazis to what have you. And, there's a lot of action in these movies. They're old black and whites. But I think, Sinister Cinema or something released those back in the day? I think you could still, it came out through Image. And I think you could still get them. But yeah, it was definitely, there was like Evil Brain from Outer Space and Invaders from Space, Attack from Space, I think Invasion from Space. But they're all a lot of action, a lot of fun. And Ken Utsui, who played Starman, would later go on to play the detective in The Ring. So if you ever saw the movie The Ring, the Japanese version of The Ring, the detective in that is Ken Utsui, who played Starman.
Interesting fun fact.
But, I remember as a kid, there was one day I, faked being sick so I could stay home from school. And my mom fell for it until she saw me sitting in front of the TV around 12 o'clock on Channel 36 and watching one of the Starman movies. And then she's like, that's a little bit too much of a coincidence for me. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about Starman. But Starman is very basically also in the vein of like Prince from Space or Invasion of the Neptune Men. Yeah, either one of those. But if you can find them and you can check them out, do so.
Cool. Blocky.
Well, similar to Bob, I had thought about talking about one of my favorite films, Zardoz. However, I did talk about it extensively in our Hidden Treasures. I'm starting to think our Hidden Treasures were also turkeys, but
some were.
So I will just point the listeners to our Hidden Treasures episode so they can hear about Speed Racer and Zardoz. And instead, I'll go back to a classic that I mentioned at the top of the episode, which is Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 9 from Outer Space. Oh my God, this movie, I heard about it before I ever saw it. I had heard about it from different sources. Of course, no internet in those days. But between things like the Medved book, cult movie book by Danny Peary. Oh gosh, I don't know what else. Maybe I don't know if I had the Psychotronic film book then.
Well, but I think that was the antithesis of the Golden Turkey Awards, because Michael Weldon, who did the Psychotronic Encyclopedia of Film, he treats all these films, pretty much unbiased. And he's kind of like has lists of the films and what they're about and background information. And you can look through it without being insulted by someone not liking a film that you do.
But I think for the longest time, Plan 9 was kind of held up as like the worst movie ever made. That was the distinction that a lot of people gave it. And so with a title like that, I was always on the lookout for it. And so going through the TV guide every week, like, when is it coming on? Can I see it? I want to see it. And so finally, I did find it in the TV guide at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. So I tell all my friends, I was like 14, 15 years old, this movie, we got to see this movie. And they're like, you're insane. And I did wind up, I was sleeping in the TV room on a sleeping bag with the alarm clock set for like 3 a.m., which I probably had stayed up till like 1. So I just slept a couple of hours and then, okay, it's on, turned it on. watched it, because we didn't have a VCR at that point, so it was like you caught it whenever you caught it, and that was it. And yeah, it was like, wow, this is like the strangest piece of crap I've ever, but it was, also entertaining, because, all the things, like, obviously, Lugosi is not Lugosi in a lot of the scenes, and then you find out later, oh, that was his the chiropractor playing Lugosi, because Lugosi had died, and then
he
you
was
have
like 6 inches taller than Lugosi too.
Right, he's like half a foot taller than Lugosi, and then of course Tor Johnson is endlessly amusing. I go get flashlight out patrol car, and all this other stuff, and the cardboard graves falling over, and all the, but like, they're like in this world all of their own, which we can only sort of comprehend what's going on. It's like Ed Wood has, like, he's in another reality, and it all makes sense to him, and you kind of grasp that. And it's sort of fascinating to watch, and especially at like 3 or 4 in the morning, it's really fascinating to watch. But the thing about it, why it's maybe a turkey, but it's not. It is entertaining in its own way. I mean, it's not like, I like Bob kind of hit on this at the beginning of the episode. Like, I think why these get more notice than like just like a drama or a romance film or whatever is because the genre films have all this other stuff, like either special effects or like monsters or whatever going for them, right? So they're they got a little more zing in them. If you see a bad movie and it's just a drama, it's like, oh, well, it's just badly acted or whatever. If you see a bad sci-fi movie, it's like, oh, the monster, was made out of ping pong balls or whatever. It's notable in some way. So, yeah, I still think Plan 9, even though it's probably really played out. I mean, we had the whole Ed Wood movie with Johnny Depp, it's a little played out now, but it's still worth checking out, because it really is like an amazing artifact of one man's mind. It's fascinating.
The granddaddy of turkeys.
Well, I think that people who think Plan 9 from Outer Space is the worst movie ever made, they've never seen like The Creeping Terror or
Robot
Monster or E.T.
Hey, like I said, you're going to have a critic tell you what you should like and not like. Yeah. Go like what you like. Go watch what you want to watch. Enjoy it. Sing the praises that it deserves. And on that note, I'll be talking about Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie. I had the pleasure of watching this on VHS, a bootleg VHS that Karen's brother purchased at a sci-fi summit.
Oh, my God.
And her brother got the biggest kick because this film was never meant to see the light of day. So the special effects were not completed. The costumes were true to the comic book. I, appreciated that. But also the poor man who played Dr. Doom, this mask over his face, and you couldn't, it was inaudible. Lines that he was delivering, and we're sitting there on the edge of the bed trying to hear. There's Reed Richards saying, well, Doom, you're not going to be able to use the portal. We're going to stop you. And the thing is like, you got that right, Reed. And then Doom will say, well, Reed. And you're like, what on earth? He's waving his hands. And so I don't know if you can get the bootleg anymore.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's out there. You really need to take a look at it. There was a documentary that I saw, and it really got in depth. They interviewed almost all the actors. They even talked to Corman a little bit on what happened. The license was about to expire, and I can't remember how he got the license for the film. And Marvel was starting to, sell the X-Men to Fox and the Hulk to Universal, and Spider-Man, they were starting to build out their cinematic universe. And, Corman, I want to say the documentary, he knew he had a limited piece of time, and they finished the film. and then it got locked away, and someone broke into the film vault and got a hold of it, and that's how the bootleg went out there. I would love if the Fantastic Four, MCU version, comes out with a nod and a wink, because it is multiverse now.
Okay.
That original film. Furthermore, I would hope that Marvel would redub those lines for Doctor Doom so we could understand more of the plot points in that film. For the time that it was made, for the lack of budget, Roger Corman famously makes low budget films. It is a fun movie if you can find it. So that's my last pick. We are at that point in the podcast where we're going to have to redo a second turkey movie, because I know we have a list of turkeys still to go through. So maybe we'll have an Easter turkey episode. I don't know if we can wait for next Thanksgiving. But it is time for our censor sweep. And this episode's censor sweep is our chief engineer, Bob. Bob, take it away.
Well, yes, this is not really something that you can go out and run out and buy somewhere. Maybe you can. Maybe I just don't know about it. But I was in Spirit Halloween this season. And they always have their big display in the middle of the store with all their animatronics around it. And this one had 4 what they call bubble tubes. And they're like 6 foot high and clear cylinders filled with water with a red light at the bottom and basically air hose. So basically it bubbles, it's red, and it just looked really cool. It was a cool effect. So I went out up to the front and I said, "Hey, so what do you do with those bubble tubes after Halloween?" And they're like, "Oh, we have a list for people if they want to buy them." Put me on the list. So I asked early enough. I was like number 1 on the list. So November 1st, when the store was closed, they gave me a call and said, "Come and get your bubble tubes." And they originally quoted me like $40 for each one. And I thought, okay, that's fair. And when I went there, the manager was like, "Oh, well, we're having our half off on everything, so they're $20 a tube." I'm like, dang. Wow. So yeah, I got 4 of them here. One's going to go in the tiki patio. One's going to go over by the tiki bar. I'm going to see. I haven't had time in the last week, but I'm going to see if I can pull one apart and change the bulb out for a green bulb. And then I can put it next to the creature corner, next to the Creature from the Black Lagoon pinball machine. And then I should have one extra, which I'll probably keep as a spare or parts or whatever. But it was very cool. Just very cool. I always go to Spirit after it closes to do the post-Halloween 50% off sale and buy an animatronic or 2. But, yeah, this time I was able to get part of the display. So, yeah, I'm giving away the secret, but, from here on, I'm going to pay more attention to those displays. And I may be able to get a few things that we could use at like a Planet 8 booth when we do a Planet 8 listener party or a Creatures Con or something, or find something I can use somewhere else or in the Monster Garage. Who knows? Could be anything in those displays.
Very, very nice. The possibilities are endless. Well, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, thanks again for listening. Look, get on the social pages, Facebook and Twitter. Let us know some of the turkeys that we maybe didn't get around to this episode that are on your list. And, we can have a little discussion online about that. Appreciate you all for tuning in, listening to us time and time again. Make sure you share the Planet 8 social pages out there with other folks. And until next time, stay safe. Peace out.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.
They're not bad movies, just misunderstood.